with Grazel one more time, and today we're going to be talking about emotional safety in relationships and specifically emotional availability. So, this is a word that comes up over and over again in therapeutic contexts, and it's so central to relational health. So, Grazel, why is it that there's this really big, important piece in relationships, and so many couples find it so difficult to actually maintain that piece?
That's such a great question. Um, Emotional safety is so core to emotional health. So it takes a lot of work to attain that. I think everybody knows that it takes a lot of emotional vulnerability and mindfulness, being
Mm-hmm.
aware of what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and how it's going to land when you share it. But sometimes when we're feeling activated, our nervous system sometimes can be hijacked. And once our nervous system is hijacked, it's hard to remember the things we know how to do. So it
Mm-hmm.
can create emotional disconnection that can feel like emotional safety is so far-fetched. So it requires a lot of practice um, on the daily to attain emotional safety. But once it's attained, it's reflexive and you don't even have to think about it as much.
Yeah, and I guess getting to that state where it's just so ingrained in you, that's kind of the goal of couples therapy in a sense, where these things just become automatic. Um, Flipping it around a little bit, what does emotional unavailability actually look like? How can you tell that someone's actually being unavailable?
A person with emotional unavailability means that they're deeply in their avoidance. I would say they're not able to really show vulnerability to others who they care about because it's too scary. Um, it can show up in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it has to do with understanding, attachment and how that attachment security has been affected in childhood. That can lead to emotional unavailability. Um, I wouldn't call someone who's just withdrawing for groundedness emotional unavailability. So, sometimes we all do need a break when we're feeling activated and we need to probably freeze or not speak. But if the person is able to come back later and return to a very hard conversation, I wouldn't call that emotional unavailability.
Mm-hmm.
It is when we're emotionally unavailable, that means we don't let people in.
Yeah, and I guess that's ultimate, the ultimate standard. If you got all your armor on and no one can penetrate it, that's how you
Yeah.
know that's how the other person knows that you're just not gonna let them in. Um,
Yeah.
and I can imagine when there's a persistent pattern of that, particularly in the therapy room, emotions can get a little bit heated because one person's got their defenses up, the other one's trying to connect, but they're not letting them. And I imagine things like emotional defenses start to rear their head. So there might be a lot of crying, there might be a lot of shutting down. Do you find that those things tend to increase as the therapy sessions go on before they start to get better and that connection is formed?
Great question. In the beginning of the work in couples therapy that we do as EFT therapists, there's a lot of escalation that happens in the beginning because couples are coming in pretty escalated or pretty disconnected. So the therapy space is used to be able to vent. So there's a lot more crying, there's a lot more defenses, there's a lot more yelling. And that's where they're at, and we need to meet them there
Mm-hmm.
in order to de-escalate their fights. Now, does that subside once they're de-escalated? Yes. But does it mean it doesn't increase again later? It's tricky because what gets better in the stage two of our work in EFT is there is a lot more crying because they're much vulnerable to each other, where they can lean on to each other. Is there less yelling and disconnection? Absolutely. But the crying and the discomfort becomes a lot more, but you have another
Hmm.
partner there that can hold you in that space. Whereas in
Mm.
the beginning of the work, they don't have each other.
It's like a different kind of crying. It's not crying because
Yeah.
you're being attacked, it's crying because you're coming together. Am I understanding that
And
right?
yes, and there's emotional safety
Yeah.
already. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. But let's say in those early stages when there is a bit of attack going on in the room, what's usually happening underneath that reaction when one person is just feeling constantly attacked?
The general feeling when they're feeling constantly attacked is that it's safe not to engage, so they withdraw.
Hmm.
Sometimes when you're feeling constantly attacked, the response internally for that person is to fight. So they argue back and they go into a defense cycle with their partner and they attack back, right?
Hmm.
So it's either one withdraws, one frees, or one attacks back.
Yeah. And I guess when this is where kind of power dynamics maybe come in, because is that how you can tell who's the dominant one in the relationship, if they attack back and if they kind of withdraw?
Mm, not necessarily. Um,
Hmm.
Individual presentations of behaviors is not static, it's very dynamic, right?
Mm.
So uh, it's different every time, and that's why I love doing therapy. It's different for every couple. It's different on their mood that day. So they can be dominant one day and they can withdraw and still have dominance in the withdrawal.
Mm.
So it's really interesting because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not dominant when you're in withdrawn state.
Mm.
There's a lot of power when you're not speaking about your process.
Hmm.
So that, it's not I wouldn't say that that's a vulnerable space to be in, but
Hmm.
there's also dominance over taking space and wanting to speak about the issue right away. So it's really different.
Yeah, that's so interesting because from my point of view, if someone's withdrawing, there's a sense of them kind of shrinking down, and that is like a submissive thing. But you're saying that's not necessarily the case. That's really interesting. Um,
That could be, it could be both.
yeah.
There's people that feel a lot smaller when they're being criticized a lot and attacked,
Hmm.
and they'll, withdraw and hide and stay small, and they don't feel dominant in that space. There are other people that use the withdrawal as a way to feel powerful and dominant, and
Hmm.
that's different.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So okay, I guess final question. How can a couple tell the difference between someone feeling emotionally overwhelmed and emotionally vulnerable? Because I guess they can kind of present in a similar sort of way. Would you agree?
Yes, and emotionally overwhelmed and emotionally vulnerable, I think they're the same. When we feel overwhelmed, it's very vulnerable.
Mm.
So I think it's the same. Now, maybe the question is more like, if how is one person showing the overwhelm? Are they becoming more vulnerable with their partner when they're showing that? Or are they just staying overwhelmed, but then still feeling vulnerable, but they're not able to express what's going on for them? And both can be vulnerable. Because some people, when they show a level of emotion, whatever it may be, it's already vulnerable for them. And this, I can speak for that also. For some people who express anger, you would think that that's not vulnerable for them, but it is very vulnerable for some people
Mm.
to express anger, right? And I think that's overlooked a lot because when people view people who are angry as someone who is not being vulnerable, there are people that when they feel angry, they don't like it
Mm.
and it feels really uncomfortable and vulnerable. So it's really, it's relative. It depends on the person that's showing it. So understanding and being curious about what the overwhelm means and what vulnerability means is a way to connect.
Mm. Yeah, and connection is kind of the name of the game in this space when we're talking about couples therapy. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just it's such an interesting space, isn't it? Isn't it? Because there's so many factors at play, and it's almost like as a therapist, you're just trying to follow the threads where they lead, so that you can unravel a mess. And I guess that's what you're trying to do clinically in the room.
Yes, that's a good image that you're bringing up. That's practically how it is, you know.
Yeah.
I follow where the loop is and where they get entangled, and then help them get entangled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much for your time again, Grazel, and we'll speak again in a moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.